Hi, I'm Doug Vogt from the Deinhold Foundation. It's February 18th, 2021, and this is a continuation of the previous video. This one is in Series 4, Part 5I. I did a lowercase I, so people shouldn't think it's a 1. Anyway, this one's going to cover some of the loose ends from the previous one, and I'm going to cover also going from a republic to an empire and why they want to do it. And the other one is cults and things people should avoid, because with a disaster like this, a polar reversal is going to happen. People are going to take advantage of you. And so I don't want that to happen, so I'm doing this video so you know what to look for. Cleaning up some loose ends from the previous one. These are the three gentlemen. Two of these guys were the first ones landing on the moon, but everyone was wondering why they look so sad. I covered it in the previous video, the link, but one of my viewers sent me an email, and he was right. He said Armstrong was one of the first man to stand on the moon. He became reclusive. Aldridge became an alcoholic and alleged wife beater, and Collins never acted the same after the mission. And it could very well be because they were told why the mission, what they were looking for, what they found on the moon, and what it really meant. And I think it would upset anybody, but they just found out the real truth, and it didn't go over too big. Previous video I covered DARPA's cave issues and the government building shelters and cave systems all over the place. Anyway, one of my viewers sent me this link, this picture here of the Capitol. Now in 2000, Congress approved to build a visitor center by the Capitol. And by 2002 to 2004 or 5, they were building it. I don't know if this is the final cost. By the way, this thing is going to be 580,000 square feet on 3 levels. And all below ground. And in the literature, when you go online and you search for, the Capitol Visitor Center, you'll see that this thing went down 70 feet. And it went probably to the edge, but also some of it underneath the Capitol, which is kind of dangerous. This building in the center is, I think it's about 200 years old, and you generally don't want to fool with the foundation of a building 200 years old. But this whole thing is the area of this thing. It's a big area. Anyway, it includes space for the House and Senate also. So it wasn't just the visitor center. It was more than that they were building here. The facility occupied an area roughly 3/4 the size of the Capitol. That's huge. The overall project budget was $621 million. And I figured it out. There's tables online of standard building costs for office buildings, because that's all this was, minus any cost for windows. There's no windows here. 580,000 square feet times average building cost should be $478 per square foot, gets you this. Now, even if it was like 20% over, they're over $300 million more than what it should have cost. So this is a view at the Capitol, what they're doing here. This here is a subway system or some kind of access to, well, the Supreme Court's over here. Here it is in the picture here. And FBI building is up there, and the White House is up there also. And then we have, this is the view from the Capitol looking in the other direction. And yes, that is a place for a subway, which I think they have subway access or train access here. So this is a very, very involved building. I read their website, how involved it was, how they were making it. The project footprint covers 5 acres, approximately 193,000 square feet, an area that is larger than the footprint of the Capitol building itself. Now, the first thing you have to say to you, wait a minute, this is just a visitor center. Why are they building something that's about the same size as the Capitol itself? Doesn't make any sense, now really does it? And the cost is twice of what it should have been. They could have built this 3-story thing right here. They could have had 1 story above ground and 2 stories below without interfering with the beauty and vision of the Capitol for a lot less money. But why are they doing it in this area in here? Why are they doing it? Well, if you read this up, I'll go on further. I already mentioned 70 below. Okay. They removed 60,000 truckloads of soil, estimated around a dump truck will take about 20 cubic yards, some will take 30. That's the low on 1.2 million cubic yards of material. That's a lot of dirt. They're just not building that thing. In their literature, they say it was for this House and Senate. They had a subway system also to the Library of Congress. Now you say, but why Library of Congress? Well, if you're going to build a train station that's going to survival cave systems, you want to make it as inconspicuous as possible. In a disaster, who's going to the library, right? Well, now you know why they're going to the library. Anyway, that's that. One more thing to contemplate how our tax dollars are being spent. Now, back to stealing an election or changing a country to a National Socialist country so they can do what they want with us. This is courtesy of Mark Cook, who took this picture in the warehouse. And this is Dominion voting systems. And this is clearly made in China. Now that's important because that means the Chinese know all the components that were put into this voting machine, which I'll cover later. You're going to learn what nobody had learned and discovered before. Anyway, when I mentioned this in the previous video, I had said, I jumped the gun and said an IP address. No, what's in here is a network card, and network card is really the MAC address of the network card. So now you're going to get a little education on computers. Now, the only reason I'm covering this subject, it's not really political, but it is because politics determines what happens to the people. And that's what I fear. Now, the Army officer who wrote me that email that you all saw, he kind of confirmed that there is some kind of a plan by some groups of people about depopulating the world. Now, that means including us, but we just don't know how many people they want to get rid of here in the United States. Now, democracies don't generally kill their own people. We leave that to communist, socialist, and national socialist countries. Here's some brief examples of some. Stalin killed probably 42.6 million. Actually, Lenin killed 5 to 6 million before Stalin. Anyway, Mao Zedong, the Chinese, they're currently with 37.8 million dead. I've seen numbers much higher than that. It really doesn't matter. Hitler is not fascist, it's National Socialism. It is left-wing, not right-wing. It is left-wing. Chiang Kai-Shek, he was a National Socialist. In fact, he bought a lot of German equipment, including German helmets. Lenin, actually I've seen 5 to 6 million he killed of his own people. Tojo, about 4 million people. Pol Pot, oh, lovely guy. The killing fields in Cambodia. For a communist future that was going to be bright and wonderful. Of course, anyone who wore glasses, he killed. It goes on and on. There's other more complete tables out there, some that are pretty long, and you can go look for that on your own. The point being is that democracies don't kill their own people. Dictatorships do. The reason I'm doing this and showing you this stuff is I'm trying to prevent them succeeding in turning this country into a National Socialist state. Okay, FCC filings of Dominion voting systems. They received $400 million from a Swiss bank with close links to the Communist Chinese government less than a month before the election. If this isn't a red flag to anybody, you're basically dead from the neck up. October 8, 2020, Staple Street Capital filed SEC Form D, which they can't lie about. They listed the $400,000 compensation, securities, UPC, which also notes that another payment of $200 million was received in December 2014. As an accountant, I'll tell you what this means. Dominion, or the other company that they bought, the succeeding company, Sequoia, they only grossed, I think, $100 million. If their profit margin was high for 15%, it means the company's only worth 6 times profit, maybe $90 to $100 million. They overpaid to the tune of $600 million. They're buying something else. UBS Securities, a Swiss investment bank, owns about 25%. UBC Securities Limited, Chinese investment bank, remaining 25%. Securities Company Limited is owned by the Chinese government. Okay, Beijing, and this goes the breakdown. I showed this in the previous video also. I want it to sink in your heads what's really going on. All Communist Chinese front groups. They're covering something. Okay, I used to own a company called Archive Index Systems. Somebody bought it from me, a nice man in California. It's called archiveindex.com. And we sold scanners. Sold scanners from about the early 80s on. This is some OCR software. Now, in the old voting systems, they'd have a paper ballot, and they'd have boxes that you'd fill in or check off. I'm going to explain how it worked. They used Zone OCR software. It's been around for about 20 years. And these are some of the companies that write that stuff. Lead Tools, I sold their stuff. Simple Index, I sold their stuff. Abby Fine Reader. That was actually a Russian OCR software that came out of the KGB. The two guys that worked for the KGB and wrote the software, it's a language translating software. They took the software with them, and that's why it's able to translate 70 languages. I knew immediately it was either the State Department or an intelligence agency did that. OmniPage, I know I've never used them, but I know they have Zone OCR, and Kofax, I used to sell their stuff and their hardware too, and they did have it. And the way it works is you'd have a box, 2 boxes or multiple boxes, and you outline where the boxes are. Now, the print that makes the box has a certain number of pixels, and it has a certain value. If anyone marked anything in there, the value would be over that, and you'd mark that as a check. It would then, the database software would then create a flat database table, either comma delimited or tab delimited, or sometimes called space delimited. And it could be imported into a database. That's how the machines and this software worked. And the original voting machines with the paper thing did exactly that, and that's how they work. Okay, the history of Dominion software machines and systems is located in Wikipedia. Here it is. I'll have the link in the description area. Please read it. You'll enjoy it. It tells the whole story. It was bought, sold, bankrupt, things like that. And here's the 2 links for Dominion software, verifiedvoting.org and dominionvoting.com. And look at it and go through it, and you'll understand their point of view on how they present the product. This is what their Dominion software looks like, what the voter sees. It's basically entirely screen-driven, no paper. You take your finger and you mark who you want to vote for. Then you hit next, and it goes on to as many screens as it is. When you get done, the system in another printer produces a sample ballot. This is what it looks like. It says Georgia's new ballots, and it describes what you're voting for and who it was. This is a recap of who you selected in this system, and the voter's supposed to check it off, make sure it's okay, and the system generates this code. I think it's called CX code, but I'm not sure. But creates this barcode thing. Anyway, then that is put into the Dominion software scanner. It reads this and creates an entry in a flat database table. That's how the system works. There's really no paper except this piece of paper. This is the complaint that was filed in Michigan by president's lawyers against Sequoia. And Smartmantic. And I covered this in the other video, so you can download both complaints in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania and Michigan if you go to the other part 5H. Anyway, so I went to a reliable source outside of the lawyers who really would be on the side of the president, which is just fine. So I found, and a friend of mine sent it to me just today. Fiona Chen Consulting Company, a tax and forensic accounting firm. This is her, and this is how many degrees she got, or a license, a PhD, I assume in accounting, a CPA and something like that. And she's located in Illinois. And her company is Fiona Chen Consulting Company. And here is her link, and I'll have the link also in the description area below. And this is her summary. That's on her webpage. And I have also the PDFs of both of her reports for both Wisconsin and Michigan. I'm going to summarize. I want you to pay attention to what she's saying here. You can trust the CPA. Maybe not lawyers, but the CPA is a forensic accountant, is going to go through and find errors and basically who stole things. That's what they do, and where the money is and where the assets are. We are looking at the largest IT fraud in U.S. history. Below are confirmed events which happened. Some news media are trying to cover up and say it is outliers. What outliers is a term used that statistical manipulation. It's not that at all. By the way, what I'm going to show you or teach you at the end of this is what they don't know, but today or tomorrow I'm going to contact them and tell them, because they didn't know enough about the computers to know what's really going on. The issue is that the data were changed both in the computer system and not by vote ballot scans. Remember the piece of paper with the barcode thing? Goes in, it was into that computer, in that scanner. Unless we forensic audit the voting computer system, we cannot trust the data. The data were changed in more than 100,000 votes each time to have increased Biden's votes. The issue is that the data were artificially changed and were able to be artificially changed in the computer system at this magnitude. It was even more than that. According to these contemporary data trends and screenshots, the fraudulent vote numbers were likely to have been input directly into the computer system without physically scan of vote ballots. That explains why the total number of votes increased, but not the percentage changed. They just went in and changed the database tables. I'm going to tell you how they did it. The two numbers do not reconcile because the votes were not scanned in. The data number was changed directly from the database. This is data dump, can be done through manipulations of and through computer systems. What we are sure is that it is a data dump. Happen to have, okay, goes on. 2 reports. This is the name of her 2 reports. She has a link on her webpage. Download them both and enjoy them and get an education. Okay, this is the lawsuit that the president's lawyers filed in Georgia. And I have, if you want a copy of this, go on to my, send me an email and ask for in part 5H, these reports, the 2 complaints. The design and features of Dominion software do not permit a simple audit to reveal its misallocation, redistribution, or deletion of votes. First, the system's central accumulator does not include a protected real-time audit log that maintains the data and timestamps of all significant election events. By the way, in document imaging software, which I used to sell, the good ones actually have a date and time and who made changes on the database or entered stuff. Their system doesn't have it at all. By the way, this is all my opinion of what happened, so you understand. But I think the evidence I'll be presenting is enough that you'll understand, you'll think my theory is right. The key components of the system utilize unprotected logs, those database tables, the flat tables. Essentially, this allows an unauthorized user the opportunity to arbitrarily add, modify, or remove log entries, causing the machine to log election events that do not reflect actual voting tabulations. More specifically, they were making up the votes or changing the votes. Symantec announced sale of Sequoia voting systems. Now this is interesting. This goes back to November 2007. A press release from Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, a Democrat from New York. Gee, an honest Democrat, isn't that nice? Washington, Smartmantic, the voting system machine firm that ties to the Venezuelan government. Yeah, they're admitting they have ties to the Venezuelan government. The Congress is saying it. Today announced that it is divesting ownership of the voting machine company Sequoia Voting Systems. Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney shined the congressional spotlight on Sequoia purchase last year, Smartmantic, because it posed serious, she's saying, serious national security concerns about the integrity of our elections. Last year, Smartmantic decided to sell Sequoia rather than complete an investigation by the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. There it is. So they wouldn't be found out how this thing works. They sold the thing and got out of town. Not really. They just turned it over to somebody who was related to the Communist Chinese government. Okay, next piece of news. State of New Jersey in 2008 wanted the Princeton computer security experts to go over the Dominion voting machines to see any security flaws existed in them. Sequoia threatened the two professors with a lawsuit. Now, I'm going to read the whole thing because this is pretty small type. I don't think you could read it, but I'm going to read it to you. Interesting email from Sequoia. Now, this is the letter was coming from an Edwin Smith Compliance Quality Certification Sequoia Voting Systems. Dating March 17, 2008 by Ed Feldin. That's one of the professors. A copy of an email I received has been passed around on various mailing lists. Several people, including reporters, have asked me to confirm its authenticity. Since everyone seems to have read it already, I might as well publish it here. Yes, it is genuine. So here's the email. Smith, Ed, Sequoia. They deleted his real address. That's probably easy. And here, Feldin and Appel, Princeton University. Not exactly a minor university school. You're top 3 or top 5 in the whole country. Subject, Sequoia Advanced Voting Machines from New Jersey. Dated March 14, 2008. Dear Professor Feldin and Appel, as you have all likely read in the news media, certain New Jersey election officials have stated that they plan to send you one or more Sequoia Advanced voting machines for analysis. I want to make you aware that if the county does so, it violates their established Sequoia licensing agreement for use of voting systems. Sequoia has also retained counsel to stop any infringement of our intellectual properties, including any non-compliance analysis. We will also take appropriate steps to protect against any publication of Sequoia software, its behavior, because they don't want you to know how it works, its behavior, reports regarding some or any other infringement of our intellectual property. Very truly yours, Edwin Smith. Pretty obviously they're covering something up. This is totally outrageous and preposterous, and I'm sure these two professors have a lot to say. I don't know if they ever got the machines, but I hope they did. Now, this is also reported by NBC News on August 2019. And there's the link. I'll try to remember to have it in the description area and watch it. Okay, now you're going to get the education that the forensic accountant didn't know and the attorney's lawyer, the president's lawyers didn't know. Okay, this is a network card. Now, most motherboards now have the network chip already on the motherboard. And we know that there is a network card in the Dominion software machines because their representative in Congress under testimony said that, yes, it can be connected to the network. Of course, you have a whole bunch of voting machines. How do you connect it to a server or a router to go someplace? And of course it is. So it's got a network card. Now, a network card has a unique identification. It's called a MAC address. Media Access Control Address. And the first 6 numbers are the manufacturer's unique code, their basic code. The last 6 letters and numbers, forget the we, for some reason they put it in there. This represents that particular card specifically. And each card is supposed to have a separate, unique MAC address from anybody else's. And that's not really the case. I know of 2 that had exactly the same. Anyway, if you want to see what your MAC address is in Windows, in the command line, CMD, and then type in OONFIG/all, and that's the Windows config, or in Windows 10, follow this. You type in that in the command line, and then click on the network connection card, and then hit on details, and details will bring up everything, your IP address as well as the network card. Anyway, the network card is all you need to get into your computer besides having the IP address. This is a program that hackers use to get into computers. Now, the Chinese government already has the MAC address of all their voting machines. They have that. Now, I don't know if they scraped off the MAC address on it on the motherboard conveniently, so only they know the MAC address. But you still have to know the IP address of the individual server. So Sequoia goes there, and they freely say that they have updates, and they have to load the software into the county or state's voting machines. So they immediately know the IP address. And they freely say, and the counties have said, that they had to have updates in the software. So they had updates in the software, and it was remotely done. So Sequoia had access to their server and was able to update their updates onto their server. So what this piece of software does, and this is for hackers, that's how I found it on YouTube. By the way, they have a hackers convention. Go look it up on YouTube. You'll really get a good education. And they were trying to crack into these things too. They bought some of the machines on eBay, believe it or not. Anyway, all you do is you type in, okay, so you know the city or the county's IP address of their servers. So on this software, you could do a range of how many IP addresses the county has. You run the program. You have some different options here. And it brings up all the IP addresses that are in this range, and look what it has here. All the MAC addresses. And this is the manufacturer of this MAC address, of this network card, etc. In other words, now, the Chinese have all of these. Well, the ones that they have. So they go through this list. They match it up with the IP address tells you exactly where the server is. It tells you what county is in. If something even, you can even get it to show what building it's in. So they know which county it is, and then they just look for the sales that were going to that county through Sequoia, and they know which MAC addresses are their machines, and then when the voting gets done with, voting here gets done about 8 o'clock, about 9 or 10 o'clock, they're probably, China is 13 hours ahead of the East Coast of the United States. So at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, our time in the evening is 10 o'clock in the morning there. They must have logged on. This is my theory, but it makes sense. And my belief. They must have logged on to the machine. They know the IP address, courtesy of Sequoia. And they know this already. They go onto the machine. They go look for the flat database tables. They download those. They leave the other ones there for a while. They massage those and alter what they have to alter, and then they upload the replacements back onto their own machine. And that's why they saw all of a sudden, after 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, which is like 3 o'clock in the afternoon in China, the numbers started changing dramatically. This happened in Pennsylvania. It happened everywhere they have this system. And that's how I think they did it. They used the hacker tools. You imagine the hacking tools that the Chinese government has? It's wonderful stuff. They had no problem. This is exactly what they did, is my opinion. Here's the other way the vote was fixed. This misguided soul, Carl Fexton, a Marxist-Leninist, this is from his, I think, Facebook page, ballot thrower, where, blah, blah, blah. This is him, I guess, a little earlier, younger, with Emperor Tsi next to him. I don't know why he's there. It must be a big shot of some sort. But here's his posting. I think it's on Facebook or someplace. Time has come to come clean. I work for Wayne County, Michigan, and I threw out every Trump vote I saw, tens of thousands of them, and so did all of my coworkers. I regret nothing. Wonderful guy, isn't he? I guess with communism and socialism, the ends justify the means, so that promise of a promised land that everybody has everything they ever wanted. Never happens, though. This young, misguided woman, Kari Jean, you did Michigan a favor. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this guy and her, and the people I'm going to mention later regarding cults, this poor guy was brainwashed. He didn't come out of the womb a communist and a Marxist, just like a lot of others. Either his parents or some college professor or university professors brainwashed this idiot to think that communism and socialism is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Communism, socialism, and National Socialism is nothing more than a redoing of feudalism. It's all top-down rule, and the people become nothing more than the property of the state. That's what it is. Okay. Every Democrat voted to convince the former President Trump, and they were joined by 7 Republicans. So the 7 Republicans, that interested me. Why did they do it? Now, we're back to the golden survival ticket that promised. I think that's what we're looking at here. This is Nixon's Executive Order 11490. I'm 69. This was because of they thought the sun was going to do something, and that's what they did. That's why he did it. Obama's White House Rural Council, which did nothing. I read it to you in the previous video. And these are the departments that, this is the second sheet, that Obama had in this thing, which had really nothing to do with farming at all. And this is Trump's executive order, where actually does something if you read it. That was 2007, shortly after he took office. And these are the departments that are there, but the ones that are missing are really interesting. Treasury Department, Homeland Security. So let's go see what committees these senators were on. Intelligence. That's the oversee the CIA and other intelligence agencies. They had to have been told about these shelter cave systems done by the CIA. They had to have been told. Finance have a different color because that was one of the committees that were eliminated or not on Trump's list. You know, Treasury wasn't on there. Health, Education, and Labor, that's on 4 of them, which is really interesting, and that would be one of the ones that were listed by Nixon and Obama. Finance again on, okay, this is Richard Burr from Republican North Carolina. This is Cassidy from Republican Louisiana. Energy and Natural Resources definitely would have to. Finance, Again, not listed by Trump, but they had to have been told. In other words, you can't budget, appropriate, or figure in your finances. If you're going to spend $21 trillion, you've got to include it in your budget. How are you going to hide it? And you've got to tell the senators and congressmen what it's all about so they vote for it. Otherwise, they wouldn't vote for it. Okay, Cassidy, Health, Education, and Labor. Economic Committee, again, weren't included. Intelligence, again, sticks out like a sore thumb. Susan Collins, when she talks, it almost sounds like she's got brain damage. Committee on Appropriations, Health, Education, and Labor. Lisa McCloskey, I don't know how she could have elected in Alaska. Energy and Natural Resources, Appropriations, again, you're going to spend $21 trillion, you got to go to the appropriations. Health, Education, and Labor. Mitt Romney, Health, Education, and Labor again. Homeland Security, not listed by Trump, was on everybody else's. Budget, same thing. He had to have known what's going on. He was told. Finance, Ben Sasse from Republican Nebraska. Finance and Budget, they had to have been told. Judiciary, Intelligence Committee again. Pat Toomey, Banking, Housing and Urban, that's HUD. That's HUD. And they were the ones who spent a lot of those trillions of dollars. Finance and Budget again. My theory is they were flat out told. They had that magic golden ticket of survival. They were on the list, sometimes referred to as the list. Okay, now we're going to go to what you're supposed to avoid, because people are going to be taking advantage of you. When people are in a stressful situation, don't know what to do, people like what I'm going to show you and cover are going to take advantage of you in any way, shape they can for their own egos, and they want your money, and you'll see what happens. It doesn't work out good for anybody, mostly for the people who get roped into them. This is Elizabeth Clare Prophet. She's no longer with us, but in 1975, Elizabeth Clare Prophet started the Church of Universal and Triumphant. They started Summit University and Summit University Press, and they basically had a group that basically said there was going to be a nuclear war or a cataclysm, and they should all she winds up eventually having them all go to Montana and building shelters and having the people go there. She bought a lot of land again and 12,000 acres of the Forbes Ranch. And they got the people to go there. This is in 1981. Now, my book was out, copyright in 77. It was printed in May of 78, if I remember. I get a letter from Summit University when they were in Malibu, California, and it was from a Larry Johnson, physicist. I think he was teaching there, and he compliments, he read my book, likes the stuff, going to use the stuff. And the second part of his letter, he's saying that Elizabeth Clare Prophet is going to have a lecture someplace up in Oakland, and wanted me to come up there. I have no idea why he thought I would want to, but anyway, they took my stuff and used it to scare the crap out of their own people. And that's what happened. Now, this happened again to me by somebody who'd befriended me a couple of years ago and liked my stuff, saw it from the video, and used some of it for his own presentations and turned some of it into whatever he wanted to use for himself so he can come up with his own ideas. Now, I don't mind. People are allowed to have their own opinions, and you just have to defend it. That's all. Anyway, in September of 2020, I presented a Series 1, Part 9, and proving a galactic superwave. It was an idea I came up with Parker back in the 60s, early 60s, and also Paul Le Volette also came up with it. his own idea of something coming from the center of the galaxy. And I explain it in that. I'm not going to cover it here at all. But this particular person didn't like it that I disagreed with him. And I didn't really mention his name or anything like that. I just was basically trying to prove the idea was wrong. It didn't make any sense. It was proven wrong. It was easy to prove wrong. But he got really pissed off. Anyway, he said that I wasn't the one who originated the 12,000 or 12,068 years cycles in time. He said a Heinrich event was before me. So, okay, I had heard of Heinrich, so I went back and I started doing some research. And what he noticed, he was studying, was that fresh water in the North Atlantic had certain periods of time. He was looking for oxygen 18, an isotope of oxygen, and a couple others also, carbon 14. Anyway, he's a geologist, a marine geologist, and it was in 1988. But my book was published I was out in 1978, 10 years before him. So I read his stuff, and there's no place you can get a 12,000 or 12,068 years cycle out of this stuff. This is his graph. There's no way you can get that out of this, nor reading his stuff. There is a cycle there, and it follows the Ice Age and polar reversal as best he could figure out the timing. But he didn't come up with any 12,000. I did. Here's the book, my book, Reality Revealed, the first one, 1977. This is page 79. Graph of the 12,000 year cycle. Gee, how do you like that? Now this is one I still thought was like a sinusoidal wave. Finally realized later it was really a square wave or a modified square wave. Here it is, 12, 24, 36, etc. Magnetic strength, stuff like that. Reversals. Page 84 of my book. It shows collapsing magnetic field and the potential it creates. Again, it's modified. It should be modified based on a modified square wave, so it's really a big spike. But here's the figure. Again, page 84 of my book. That's 43 or 44 years ago. Page 76, graph depicting the 12,000 year cycle and the resulting potential created, called a nova. And page 175, my drawing of the galaxy, ours, the Earth, estimated where it was, and this is where I was showing people that a star is going to be novaing every time on this 12,000 year cycle ever hits. This is before I figured out it was 12,064 years, 68 years. This is what I drew in I think it was part 9 in series 1. Now, my good friend, Dr. August Dunning, he wanted to see if I was right. So I sent him my whole database, which is the way scientists do it. And he wanted to see if I was right, if the blank periods were there. And he did. And he confirmed it. The blank periods are in fact there. And these are the dots here. And I showed this in the other video, so I'm not going to have to explain it, but there it is. But here as early as, half a year ago. And just a better picture of what I was explaining here. But nothing's changed over 40 some odd years. Here it was in 1977. Here it is now, 2020. Well, this was done. Okay, so now you know who's the first one that came up with the idea of 12,000 year cycles in time. Me. Okay, occult. This, Wanja Lelich, sociology professor at Cal State University at Chico. She's 75 years old now. She's supposedly one of the experts on cults. I've read some of her stuff. She's done a good job, and she's done good research. And I've read some of her reports. Definition. Now, the stuff that I put in brackets is me adding this stuff, because I wanted to expand this so you understood more than what she had. This stuff is her quotes. Definition. A cult is a group or movement held together by a shared commitment to a characteristic leader or ideology. It has a belief system that has the answers to all of life's questions and offers a special solution to the gained only by following the leader's rules. It requires a high level of commitment from at least some of the members. Now, I want to say one thing. A lot of her definition of a cult is, my friend said, a little too broad. And he's probably right. It is a little too broad because there's a lot of things that you could wind up saying is a cult that really isn't a cult. Anyway, some cults use religious books as the foundation of their ideology. Some use UFO or cataclysmic theology as the foundation of their philosophy. Political cults such as BLM and Antifa use Marxist ideology mixed with self-hatred and also hating your own country too. That's big on their list. The science community does not escape cults centered around particular ideas or professors. Examples are science ideologies, or global warming. That's really a government-sponsored theory and philosophy, but you know why. It's caused by humans. Ice ages are caused by comet or meteor impacts. Again, government promoted. Black holes exist in the center of galaxies. I mentioned what that was, I think in Series 1, Part 8 or 7. Even the poster boy of black holes, even Stephen Hawking, changed his mind in his last paper, basically disavows everything about black holes, which is kind of funny, but I don't think many people read it. One of my fans sent me this. She didn't want me to use her name, but I would have gladly. This shows you how that global warming is not caused by mankind at all, and how easy it is to prove. What has the most influence on our climate? Now here's the Earth. It's not the ants on that speck of dust. It took me a little bit of time. We're the ants she's talking about. This proves it right off the bat that it's the sun has the biggest effect on our weather. Now, I'd like to add at this point, suspicious O servers or zero servers or suspicious observers does a great job of covering solar activity and some earthquake stuff. And it's a good video to watch. He does a good job of doing it. And it's very helpful. He does a nice job doing it, and he does it for every morning. I don't know how he gets up that early, but that's life. Anyway, there's 4 characteristics of a cult group. Now, this is her writings. The charismatic leader is the organizer of the group. Charismatic leaders are people who are great manipulators. Boy, I've known some. They're usually salesman types. They're charming. They know how to read people. They come along and offer a message that is going to resonate with somebody. Once they get a few followers, that's all they need, and then those people go out, recruit more, and they build up an aura around the leader. My note, this is all based on some philosophy strung together from a variety of sources, such as religion, UFOs, science, or mythologies. And I'm sure all of you have come across these. I'm going to cover a few of them here briefly. I don't want to make this thing go too long. A transcendent belief system. Most religions and even political groups are going to have a transcendent belief system, a means how to get to some better place. But that's different. But what's different in cult groups is they have their way of get you there, their own special way. It is the recipe for change to get to a goal. In order to be part of the group, you have to go through a transformational process which they dictate to you, and you can't be there otherwise. In other words, toe the line and you're out the door. That's the interrogation period or indoctrination program. Marxist socialist politics teach this extensively. Eastern religions also use this method. The global warming cult teaches that the end of the world will be much, I'll say it again, teaches that at the At the end, the world will be a much better place if man's population is reduced so we don't hurt Mommy Earth. Depopulation. Gee, where have I heard that from? Systems of control. Going to give them purpose and meaning in life. Study sessions. This new worldview that requires new behavior. You got to change your behavior. Often requires cutting off in the past, usually from friends and family. Some of the most common control mechanisms these cults leaders use is purchasing a plot of land and having the followers move there. Once a core of followers are isolated on that land, the leader controls the amount of information that is allowed into the commune. The land is usually in an isolated location away from friends and relatives or large cities. The other control mechanism are rules and regulations created by the leader. All money flows to the top of the organization, leaving the followers with little to nothing. I added that being an accountant. I've seen it too many times. They ask you to build some land or building on their land, and they own the land. You don't own anything. And then when this thing breaks up, you walk away and they got your house and you're off on the street someplace. Well, the place is bankrupt. 4, systems of influence. Usually she covers peer pressure, things like that. Eventually, you're closed to new ideas and your mind is closed to anything, even whatever your relatives wind up saying. This is her website. I'll try to include it also on the bottom. Read all of her stuff. She says, women are most likely to join religious cults. Talk about religious cults and women. I'm going to cover a few of them and to give you the idea of what's going on, what to look for. Eastern cults are characterized by a belief in a spiritual enlightenment and reincarnation, attaining the Godhead and nirvana. Usually the leader draws from forms of distorts an Eastern-based philosophy or religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, and Sufism. This is the Bhagwan, Rajneesh. And I remember him, I was living in Washington State, and he basically took over a part of a county and certainly a city in eastern Oregon with his Rajneeshis. And his pull was lots of sex. You should have lots of lovemaking and sex. And ironically, mostly women joined it. Rajneesh was a religious organization in Wasco County, Oregon, 81 to 88. Again, he buys a large piece of land, 64,000 acres in Central Oregon, known as Big Muddy Ranch near Antelope, Oregon. He took over Antelope. Every morning, they line up in these red outfits. You should look this stuff up on YouTube and stuff like that. It really gets funny. There's mostly women in this group too. And the group would buy him Rolls Royces. When immigration finally was able to throw this guy out of the country back to India, they auctioned off over 90 Rolls Royces. I remember that. That was pretty funny. But again, all the wealth went to the top. Here's another one that's quite famous. Jim Jones, People's Temple. The gory details of this. Again, he buys a big piece of land in Guyana, calls it Jonestown. When the police were after him, and a congressman, Reed, was after him what he was doing, then that's when he went nuts, and if he was going to get caught, killed the congressman, and then killed everybody else there with laced Kool-Aid, with cyanide laced Kool-Aid. And the unfortunate thing, most of his people there were African Americans that fell for this nonsense. By the way, most of these cults are not granted tax-free status. And the reason is, like Dihel Foundation is a nonprofit 501c3. And I have to file a tax return, which I have to do this year. And it's public record. See what it costs. Some people who donate over a certain amount has to be recorded. But it's all public record. Being an accountant, it's no big deal for me to fill out the 990 form, so it's no big deal. But they don't want to do that because it would show where the money's going, and they don't want to do that. This is Jonestown. They had building houses there. Now, the only reason I did this, I didn't want to show the dead bodies, the bloated dead bodies. But his sign up here was interesting. Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. It's a slight variation on what the riddle quote was. That's profound. And I want you to learn from this history not to repeat it for yourself. Here's another jackass. David Koresh, Branch Davidians. Waco, Texas, siege of 1993. This is under the Clinton administration. And that's Koresh. That's the building before it burned. And that's what happened. And they found 7 barbecued bodies in there of his followers. Here's another group, Realism, a UFO religion. This guy came out of France. 90,000 members worldwide. Founder is Claude Villon, a.k.a. Real. They believe in aliens and UFOs. Real, he claims he came into contact with a green-skinned alien named Yahweh. Well, that's the Jewish word for God. He also changed his name Claude Elohim, which means another Jewish name for God. So he's got a God complex going on here. He's got an ego problem. Who told him that life on Earth was scientifically created by a species of extraterrestrials called the Elohim, another name for God. Oh, I'm sorry. He called him, the last name was Hashem, another way of saying God in Hebrew. Appearing human in form, followers are told that these aliens were angels or gods. Goes on. Anyway, this is what the spaceship that he said he saw these people in, he made a monument for himself. I think he's still going strong. I'm not too sure, though. The Church of Euthanasia. I can't make this stuff up. You know, the Church of Euthanasia, happy-go-lucky slogan, save the planet, kill yourself, and eat a queer fetus for Jesus. They must do this just for getting headlines in a newspaper. Political rather than being based on religion, the organization's core philosophy is that the planet is overpopulated. The #1 golden rule of the Church of Euthanasia is, thou shalt not appropriate. The church openly encourages suicide, abortion, sodomy, and even cannibalism. Yummy, yummy. These people are sick. The sicker part is when government latches onto this idea and want to have global depopulation. Those people who engineered this or want to do this, it's pretty obvious. I think they want to do it with another engineered plague like the CCP or the Chinese virus or some variation of it. Or it's the vaccine, who knows? I don't know what they're thinking, but these clowns want to make Hitler look like nothing more than an editor in the New York Times newspaper. I mean, they want to really kill big time. They're really sickos. I think one of the reasons is they fear the people, that the people will find out where these shelters are and run to them and prevent them from getting saved. And that's what I think they fear. So they want our numbers less. Here's a real jackass. Heaven's Gate, another UFO religion. Marshall Applewhite, again, bought a big piece of land, a house, and they all decided to kill themselves. Now, Cosmic Secret, David Wilcox. Here's his link. It's on YouTube. He seems to be doing the same background story that Real is doing. Not this guy, but Real. So, but I don't think he started any cults, but they say he's worth about $14 to $15 million. So writing books of this kind of stuff that you obviously make up is good business. This one I'm going to leave. This is kind of funny. I don't want to leave it so you're all depressed. This is a Turkish guy, Adnan Oktar, and he had a cult. It's basically his own interpretation of Islam, trying to modernize it. Turkish religious cult, jailed for, hang on, I hit my button, jailed for 1,075 years for sex crimes. In the court, he told the judge he had over about 1,000 girlfriends. Poor guy. Imagine he has to remember all their names or gifts. It's tough. He has good taste in women, though. I'll say that from him. If that's a cult, and it is actually a cult. It was just they all have big pieces of property. Their followers are on the property, and they have a TV network, and at least they used to, and everything like that. He was really in business. Okay, now this is from her words, the psychologist. Mental illness. For decades, there have been studies about the various mental issues that cult leaders and their followers have. Most cult leaders have narcissistic personality disorder. Symptoms include an excessive need for admiration, disregard for others' feelings, an inability to handle any criticism, and a sense of entitlement. As for the followers, most people who join a cult are just going through a mental crisis, and that cult seems to offer relief or fulfillment. For the most part, the mental state plays an important role in people who join a cult or is a cult leader. Now you understand why I'm going through this for you. To find out that we're going to have a polar reversal on the planet in a little over 25 years is certainly mentally disturbing. Very disturbing. And I don't want people to commit suicide. I want people alive to see this thing. Even though it may be the last thing you see, you want to see it. That's why you've been reincarnated now at this particular time in history. Anyway, the person that didn't like I criticized his idea, he wrote, this is a screenshot of his email to me. I will continue to call you a psycho and a lunatic. This is not slander or libel. At this point, every lawyer who's watching this is laughing their heads off because that is slander and libel. You might want to check the prima facie elements of that case here, counsel. What case? There's no case, and I'm not a lawyer. Why is he saying this? He's like separated from what reality is, what's going on here. You are also a liar and worse. He mentions somebody's name here, doesn't think much of your theory. That wasn't true at all. Okay, so I looked up what a psycho is short for a psychosis. Symptoms of a psychosis includes delusions and hallucinations, seeing or hearing things that others do not see or hear. Other symptoms include incoherent and nonsense speech and behavior that is inappropriate for the situation. I've done about, I think, 50 videos over about a little over 2 years, and I don't think I present myself like that at all. No one's ever called me insane or a psycho. Boring and dull sometimes, a science nerd without question, but never those two. This is the end of it. I'm throwing this thing out for when you see a pattern, you start mentioning why are we seeing this pattern? Now, I don't think those who are atheists see Genesis. This is not religion. This is in a book. They're telling what happened in the past is ancient history. So look at it like that. And the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continuously. And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. A legend of the Gelimenio Indians of Central California. The emergency of the situation, they're talking about the cataclysm of the polar reversal, determined to make some effort towards abating the public evil. The two set about a remedy. So even the Indians in California are reporting there was great personal evil before this reversal happened. Mythology of the ancient Britons. The ancient Britons believe that in the Andaluvian civilization had done great evil against God. Andaluvian means before the previous cataclysm. India Hindu mythology. The principle of 12,000 years between world cycles is hinted at in the Brahmin literature in there. There are 12,000 verses in the Brahmin literature. Each verse represents a year. And I mentioned this in one of the previous videos. In the Kali Yuga, the world soul is black in hue. It is the Iron Age, and only 1/4 of virtue remaineth. The world is afflicted with men turned to wickedness. Disease cometh. All creatures degenerate. So here you got about 4 civilizations that said something with man that they're degenerating and they're going to evil. Anyway, I think that's it. I covered it all. Anyway, the next video I'm going to cover is what the foundation is going to do, what the next stages are to at least help people know what to build, where to build it, and how to build it. And also the legal structure that should be created by those who want to get together to do this. There's no tremendous rush. It's 25 years, yes, but it's not like those movies I showed in the previous video where the people were found out about it a couple of days, weeks, or months before the event, and you were up a creek without a paddle. I'm giving you a 25+ year paddle. Anyway, Die-Hole Foundation is a nonprofit foundation, and if you want to get hold of us, info@Die-Hole Foundation. I don't know if I can answer all the emails. People send a lot, and I'll do the best I can, but I've got things I got to go finish. I hope you enjoyed this. You got a hell of an education on voting, voting systems, and cults to avoid.